All right, so far so good. Welcome everyone. Just a quickie, I say to see whether the tech works. Let me know in the comments if you notice any glitches or anything like that. If it stops as it did last week, then I'm afraid I'm just going to let it stop, and it'll mean that something, I don't know, rot has gone wrong. But anyway, welcome everyone. So yeah, this is a story called The Easter Egg by Saki. The Easter Egg. It was distinctly hard lines for Lady Barbara, who came of good fighting stock and was one of the bravest women of a generation, that her son should be so undisguisedly a coward. I mean, whatever good qualities Lester Slagby may have possessed, and he was in some respects a charming fellow, courage was certainly not to be imputed to him. As a child, he'd suffered from childish timidity. As a boy, from unboyish funk. And as a youth, he'd exchanged unreasoning fears for others, which are more formidable from the fact of having been carefully thought out over a long period of time. I mean, he was frankly afraid of animals, nervous with firearms, and he never crossed the channel without mentally comparing the numerical proportion of life belts to passengers. On horseback, he seemed to require as many hands as a Hindu god, at least 4 for clutching the reins and another 2 for patting the horse soothingly on the neck. Lady Barbara no longer pretended not to see her son's prevailing weakness. With her usual courage, she faced the knowledge of it squarely, and mother-like, she loved him nonetheless. Now, continental travel, anywhere away from the great tourist tracks, was a favourite hobby with Lady Barbara, and Lester joined her as often as possible. Eastertide usually found her at Nobeltheim, an upland township in one of those small princedoms that make inconspicuous freckles on the map of Central Europe. A long-standing acquaintanceship with the reigning family made her a personage of due importance in the eyes of her old friend the burgomaster, and she was anxiously consulted by the worthy on the momentous occasion when the prince made known his intention of coming in person to open a sanatorium outside the town. All the usual items in a programme of welcome, some of them fatuous and commonplace, others quaint and charming, had been arranged for, but the burgomaster hoped that the resourceful English lady might have something new and tasteful to suggest in the way of loyal greeting. The prince was known to the outside world, if at all, as an old-fashioned reactionary, combating modern progress, as it were, with a wooden sword. But to his people, he was known as a kindly old gentleman with a certain endearing stateliness which had nothing of standoffishness about it. Nobeltheim was anxious to do its best for his visit. Lady Barbara discussed the matter with Lester and 1 or 2 acquaintances in her little hotel, but ideas were proving difficult to come by. "Might I suggest something to the gnädige Frau?" asked a sallow, high-cheeked lady to whom the Englishwoman had spoken once or twice, and whom she'd set down in her mind as probably a southern Slav. "Yeah, might I suggest something for the reception first?" she went on with a certain shy eagerness. "Our little child here, our baby, we will dress him in a little white coat with small wings as an Easter angel, and he will carry a large white Easter egg, and inside shall be a basket of plover's eggs, of which the prince is so fond, and he will give it to his highness as an Easter offering. It is a pretty idea, no? We have seen it done once in Styria." Well, Lady Barbara looked dubiously at the proposed Easter angel, a fair wooden-faced child of about 4 years old. I mean, she'd noticed it the day before in the hotel, and wondered, in fact, rather how such a tow-headed child could belong to such a dark-visaged couple as the woman and her husband. Probably she thought an adopted baby, especially as the couple were not young. "Of course, gnädige Frau, you will escort the little child up to the prince," pursued the woman, "but he will be quite good and do as he is told. We have some plover's eggs, shall come fresh from Vienna. said the husband. Well, the small child and Lady Barbara seemed equally unenthusiastic about this pretty idea. Leicester himself was openly discouraging. But when the burgomaster heard of it, he was absolutely enchanted. The combination of sentiment and plover's eggs appealed strongly to his Teutonic mind. Well, on the eventful day, the Easter angel, who was really quite prettily and quaintly dressed, was the centre of kindly interest to the gala crowd marshalled to receive His Highness. The mother was unobtrusive and less fussy than most parents would have been under circumstances, merely stipulating that she should place the Easter egg herself into the arms of the child, and that the child had been carefully schooled about how to hold his precious burden. And then Lady Barbara moved forward, the child marching stolidly and with grim determination at her side. It had been promised cakes and sweeties if it gave the egg to the kind old gentleman who was waiting to receive it. Now, Leicester had tried to convey to it privately that horrible smackings would attend any failure in its share to fulfill its share in the proceedings. But it is doubtful if his germ had caused more than an immediate distress. Lady Barbara had thoughtfully provided herself with an emergency supply of chocolate sweetmeats. As they approached nearer to the princely dais, Lady Barbara stood discreetly aside, and the stolid-faced infant walked forward alone, with staggering but steadfast gait, encouraged by a murmur of elderly approval. Leicester, standing in the front row of the onlookers, turned to scan the crowd for the beaming faces of the happy parents. But in a side road which led to the railway station, he saw a cab. And entering the cab, with every appearance of furtive haste, were the dark-visaged couple who had been so plausibly eager for this pretty idea. The sharpened instinct of cowardice lit up the situation to him in one swift flash. The blood roared and surged to his head, as though thousands of floodgates had been opened in his veins and arteries, and his brain was the common sluice in which all the torrents met. He saw nothing but a blur around him now, and then the blood ebbed away in quick waves till his very heart seemed drained and empty, and he stood nervelessly, helplessly, dumbly watching the child, bearing its accursed burden with slow, relentless steps nearer and nearer to the group that waited sheep-like to receive him. A fascinated curiosity compelled Leicester to turn his head towards the fugitives. The cab had started at a hot pace in the direction of the station. The next moment, Leicester was running faster than any of those present had ever seen a man run. And he was not running away. For that stray fraction of his life, some unwanted impulse beset him, some hint of the stock he came from, and he ran unflinchingly now towards the danger. He stooped and clutched at the Easter egg as one tries to scoop up the ball in rugby football. What he meant to do with it, he had not considered. The thing was to get it. But the child had been promised cakes and sweetmeats if it safely gave the egg into the hands of the kindly old gentleman. It uttered no scream, but it held to its charge with limpet grip. Leicester sank to his knees, tugging savagely at the tightly clasped burden, and angry cries now rose from the scandalized onlookers. A questioning, threatening ring formed around him, and then shrank back in recoil as he shrieked out one hideous word. Lady Barbara heard the word and saw the crowd race away like scattered sheep, saw the prince forcibly hustled away by his attendants. And she also saw her son lying prone in an agony of overmastering terror, his spasm of daring shattered by the child's unexpected resistance, but still clutching frantically as though for safety at that white satin gewgaw unable to crawl even from its deadly neighborhood, able only to scream and scream and scream. In her brain, Lady Brabant was dimly conscious of balancing or striving to balance the abject shame which had him now in thrall against the one compelling act of courage which had flung him grandly and madly onto the point of danger. It was only for the fraction of a minute that she stood watching the two entangled figures, the infant with its woodenly obstinate face and body tense with dogged resistance, and her son, limp and already nearly dead, with a terror that almost stifled his screams. And over them, the long gala streamers flapping gaily in the sunshine. Lady Barbara never forgot that scene. But then, it was the last thing that she ever saw. She carries her scarred face with its sightless eyes as bravely as ever in the world. But at Eastertide, Lady Barbara's friends are careful to keep from her ears any mention of the traditional Easter symbol. Sardonic. So, okay, that was 11 minutes without a breakdown. So that's quite yeah, that seems to be working all right. Sorry if I've put a dampener on your Easter Saturdays. But that's the end. That was the end. He dies. You know, a terrorist explosion. So yeah, that's hardly the spirit of Easter, but of course it's Easter Saturday, which is a dark time. Perhaps tomorrow I've heard a rumor that to celebrate the true meaning of Easter, T.S. Eliphant might be appearing at some point on this YouTube channel with a poem to lighten our hearts. So we'll see about that. Good, thank you. All right, yeah, well, good, excellent. Well, I hope you're all having a nice Saturday evening. And yeah, I'll see you later. You can always catch up with this later on.